All right, what's going on, everybody? How's everyone doing today? Hold on for 1 second. Let me just get this plugged in here. All right. So I decided to make this video today because I watched a video from D Style yesterday about Floyd Mayweather, and he was basically critiquing Floyd Mayweather's career and talking about a lot of the claims that Floyd Mayweather has made and how Floyd Mayweather discredits a lot of other champions like Muhammad Ali, Sugar Ray Robinson, and he compares himself to those guys. And a lot of his fanatical fans will agree with him. They'll parrot and they'll repeat the same things that Floyd Mayweather says, but they really don't look deep into the history. They really don't know the history. And of course, a lot of this is subjective. But when you really look at pure hardcore fans, you have to take their opinion a lot more seriously than some of these modern day fans who just really are only fans of specific fighters, and they're not really historians of the sport. They're not really big fans of the sport. And a lot of points that D Style made yesterday in his video, I think were really good points. They're really valid. They're very credible points. And of course, like I said, the fanatical Mayweather fans are definitely gonna try to question it and disagree with it, but it's going to be hard for them to really do that with any type of credibility or any type of logic. So when you look at Roberto Duran, there's a lot of things that people don't really know about Roberto Duran. Now, obviously, you hear about how many boxing historians and many boxing pundits say he's the greatest lightweight of all time. And you could put the word arguably before that, but it's almost the general consensus out there that if you ask any person that has followed the sport for years and has been a historian and just a diehard fan of the sport of boxing, if you ask them who the best lightweight of all time is, I would venture to say that about 99.9% of those people would say Roberto Duran without question. And a fun fact that people don't know about Roberto Duran, or at least a lot of people don't know about it that I talk to, is everyone says, yeah, he started his career at lightweight. Really didn't. He turned pro at 119 and 3/4 pounds. And for a large portion of his first 2 years of the sport, he fought below 130. So he was 119 for a couple of his fights, 120-ish. So essentially, he really turned pro at super bantamweight, if you really want to get technical about it, you know. And as I said, up until 1970, he was under 130. He was 130 pounds or under. So for the first 2 years of his career, he was basically a junior bantamweight, excuse me, a super bantamweight or a junior featherweight, a featherweight, and a junior lightweight. And he really never fought at lightweight until 1971 when he weighed 132 pounds. So he could have very easily have won a title at 130 pounds. Now, back when he fought, there were only 10 weight classes. There were only two sanctioning bodies. There was only the WBA and the WBC, and there were only 10 weight classes. The only two junior weight classes that we had were junior welterweight and junior lightweight, or super welterweight and super featherweight, however you want to call it. So those were the only two junior divisions they had, and those two divisions came about in 1959. So they were the first two divisions that came after the original eight, and that was back in 1959. As I said, he could have easily won a title at 130 or 140 if he wanted to, but Roberto Duran went after the big fights. He was a guy that went after significant fights, and at that time, Those two divisions were still fairly new in the sport. They were only around for about 8 or 9 years. There really weren't any named fighters in those two divisions. So he could have easily won titles at junior lightweight and junior welterweight if he really wanted to. So this whole thing about Duran turning pro at 135, that's not correct. He won his first world title at 135, but he turned pro essentially at super bantamweight or junior featherweight. And for the first 2 years of his career, he didn't weigh above 130. So that's one thing that I think a lot of people don't know about Roberto Duran. Another thing people don't know about Roberto Duran is the guy has fought technically in 10 different weight classes. Okay. Like I said, he turned pro at 119 and 3/4 pounds. Second fight was 119 pounds. He's fought as heavy as 176 pounds. And for a great portion of the later part of his career, he fought at super middleweight. And this was a guy who was 5'7", like a 69-inch reach. And he was fighting guys who were significantly bigger than him, significantly younger than him. And he was beating them at super middleweight. And he gave Vinny Pazienza all he could handle at 168 pounds. And this is a former world champion. And obviously a pretty solid pro in his own right. And Roberto Duran was an old man in his mid-40s, mid to late 40s when he fought Vinny Pazienza, and he knocked him down in the first fight, gave him all he could handle. So this is a guy that fought in 10 weight classes. And again, you have to find me, name one boxer other than Roberto Duran that competed in 10 weight classes. 10 weight classes. Name one guy that went from 119. Everyone loves to talk about Manny Pacquiao, how he went from flyweight or turned pro at 105 or 106 pounds, went from junior flyweight all the way up to 154 pounds. Well, technically 150 pounds. Everyone looks at that as like, wow, how did he do that? But to me, it's much more impressive seeing a guy like Roberto Duran turning pro at 119 and 3/4 pounds, fighting all the way up to 176 pounds, and doing it in his late 40s, mid to late 40s. Guy retired when he was 50 years old. Fought all the way up till he was 50 years old. This guy had the second longest career in the history of the sport of boxing, I believe, and anyone can correct me if I'm wrong here. If anyone can prove me wrong here, I challenge them, because I did the homework on this. Other than Jack Johnson, who had a 34-year career, Roberto Duran had a 33-year career. And if you follow that career, the longest period of inactivity he's had was 18 months, and that was back in 1984 after he got knocked out by Tommy Hearns. He took like a year and a half off, and he came back after that in like 1986. So to me, this guy having a 33-year career, being only the second fighter to have fought in 5 decades. His career spanned 5 decades. And the only other guy that did that was Jack Johnson. And this was a guy who fought in the late 1800s, early 1900s. So you have to go back that far to find that. So you hear all these statistics, Manny Pacquiao going from 106 to 154, and everyone acts like that's never been done before. And Roberto Duran, I think, again, Manny Pacquiao fought in 8 divisions. Roberto Duran fought in 10. And if you really think about it, like Floyd Mayweather, Manny Pacquiao, like Floyd, how many fights at 140 did Floyd fight in? How many fights at junior middle? I think Manny Pacquiao only fought 1 fight at junior middleweight, and it was at catch weight. Floyd Mayweather, I think, fought like 1 or 2 times at 140. These guys, they stayed in weight classes. They did, and they never really unified, or they never fully unified, or they were never undisputed champions. Roberto Duran was an undisputed champion at lightweight. So I believe what Roberto Duran has done, to me, in my own humble opinion, I think Roberto Duran had the most impressive boxing career in the history of the sport by the amount of fights he fought, and he was in probably the best era of boxing. You could even argue he was in the best era of boxing of all time. He was in an era with Benitez, with Sugar Ray Leonard, with Marvin Hagler, with Tommy Hearns. That was the golden era of boxing. And this was a guy that never, like I said, never took more than 18 months off in his career. He had partial retirements, but they lasted a year, year and a half, and he always came back. So when people want to talk about Manny Pacquiao and people want to talk about Floyd Mayweather, to me, this guy, Roberto Duran, his career was just amazing. I don't think any, even with all due respect to Sugar Ray Robinson, I don't even think that his career was better than Roberto Duran's, in my opinion, in my own humble opinion. You could look at Archie Mora, how long his career was, the amount of knockouts he had, and all this and that. And again, this is no disrespect to any other fighter, but just looking at the totality of what Roberto Duran did, the era that he fought in, and being able to just accomplish things that pretty much no one's ever done. It's amazing. It's amazing. And he was the only guy to really beat Sugar Ray Leonard in his prime. Like Sugar Ray, no one ever beat Sugar Ray Leonard in his prime. No one. No one. And then when Ray Leonard rematched Roberto Duran, he did it very shortly thereafter because as he said out of his own mouth, was he knew that Duran was going to blow up in weight and be out of shape, which Duran did. He got up to 200 pounds. And Leonard got him in the ring like in 6 months. Tried to sign the rematch, get that rematch sealed up in 6 months. He wasn't going to give Duran time to get fully ready to. I mean, obviously, you're a fighter, you got to stay in shape, whatever. That's Duran's fault, no question about it. But he intentionally made that fight as quickly as possible to give Duran as little amount of time to be at his best. So he knew Duran at his best was all he could handle, and he did everything he could to try to make it so Duran wasn't going to be at his best. Now, again, that's Duran's fault, no question about it. But that's how much respect Ray Leonard had for Duran. So, and the thing about Floyd Mayweather is even to this day, he's still taking shots at the greats. He's the only fighter that I can ever remember in history that really never paid homage to the fighters of yesteryear. Mike Tyson always gave props to Muhammad Ali, always gave props to the old-time heavyweights, Joe Louis, the fighters before him. And even Larry Holmes, he had that incident where he criticized Rocky Marciano, but he always paid homage to Muhammad Ali. He always gave credit to Muhammad Ali for being the greatest. Sugar Ray Leonard always gave credit to Sugar Ray Robinson. Even Muhammad Ali, who took shots at Joe Louis, they had their little back and forth back in the day. But he always would say that Sugar Ray Robinson was the greatest fighter of all time. He was the guy that was my biggest influence. Floyd Mayweather never really gives these guys props. Like, it doesn't really show humility at all. It's almost like he's just, to me, I think he's just very disrespectful to the old time fighters, And again, he's had a great career, but I just don't, when you look at some of these fighters that he's mentioning, Sugar Ray Robinson, Roberto Duran, Muhammad Ali. And if you were to take a poll, if you were to ask any boxing pundit, if you were to ask, any person that's been following the sport for a great length of time, if you were to, ask people like that, who was the greatest heavyweight of all time? The majority of people are going to say Muhammad Ali. Who's the greatest pound for pound fighter of all time? Sugar Ray Robinson. Who's the greatest lightweight of all time? Roberto Duran. When you talk about Floyd Mayweather, the only thing you could really say is he's he's earned the most money out of any boxer in the history of the sport. That can't be taken away from him. But outside of the monetary accomplishments, outside of all that, when you want to talk about accomplishments, you want to talk about just feats accomplished in the sport of boxing, I don't think you can compare him to those other guys. I just think it's ridiculous when you try to compare him to those other guys. There was no IBF. There was no IBF when Roberto Duran fought. So who knows if he would have had more titles if there was an IBF. It wasn't an IBF until later on, obviously, until 83. So a great portion of Duran's career, there was no IBF. There was no interim titles. There was no gold champion, silver, none of that crazy stuff like there is today. And when you talk about Manny Pacquiao, they say he has 8 titles. Okay, yeah, but they're counting an IBO title and they're counting a ring title at featherweight and an IBO title at junior welterweight. And the guy only fought once at 140 pounds, and he only fought once at junior middleweight. So these were basically kind of showcase fights. When the days when Roberto Duran fought to become champion, you fought the best guy in the division. Like every time Roberto Duran became a champion, you could argue that you can't even really argue. He fought the best guy in the division at the time. He didn't just fight just to pick up a title just for the sake of picking up a title. All the fights that he fought meant something. They were significant. You can go back in history and you could look at his career and you could see many memorable fights. Unfortunately for Floyd Mayweather, you really can't look at any fight and say, wow, that was a memorable fight. That was a real standout, memorable fight. When Roberto Duran fought Sugar Ray Leonard the first time, that was a war. That was just like a split decision victory for Duran. That was a very memorable fight. His fight with Marvin Hagler was a very memorable fight. It was a very competitive fight. It's a fight that people can look back at and say that's a historical fight. Even his fight against Iran Barkley in 87, I think 87, 88, when he was 37 years old, fighting a much younger Iran Barkley, a much bigger Iran Barkley, a guy 6'1", fighting a guy 5'7". And Duran knocked him down. And this was right after Barkley knocked out Tommy Hearns. Shortly thereafter, and Duran was a significant underdog in that fight, and he won that fight. Like Duran had memorable fights. He had a memorable career. And in the biggest fight of Floyd Mayweather's career against Manny Pacquiao, where the stage was set for that to be a historic fight, the guy laid a dud. You can blame it on Manny Pacquiao all you want, but the guy laid a dud. Just laid a dud. Just got to be honest with you. It was a very disappointing performance or a very disappointing fight. So when you want to talk about accomplishments, you want to talk about great careers, to me, in my own humble opinion, I think Roberto Duran had the most impressive career in the history of the sport. When you look at what he did and what he was able to accomplish, and you look at the era he fought in. He fought in an era where Muhammad Ali was fighting, and he was the heavyweight champion of the world. But yet, as great as Muhammad Ali was, the attention was still on the lighter weight classes because of how great that era was. You had all those great fighters, and that was when boxing started changing. He was in an era where him, Sugar Ray Leonard, Wilfredo Benitez, Marvin Hagler, Tommy Hearns, they transcended the sport. They were the guys who were responsible for the attention to be looked more so at the lighter weight classes as opposed to the heavyweights. For years, boxing was all about who the heavyweight champion was. Roberto Duran fought in the era where himself and the group of fighters that he fought changed that. That was the beginning of people looking at the lighter weight classes more so than the heavyweights. For years, people were more interested in Sugar Ray Leonard, Tommy Hearns, Marvin Hagler, Roberto Duran, those guys more so than the heavyweights. If you think about it, when Larry Holmes became champion, these guys were more popular, and the more attention was being given to them than Larry Holmes. So you could argue that, he fought in the best era ever. And he could have easily, in my opinion, won titles in 6 weight classes if he decided to compete at 130 and 140. But again, he's not just going to fight in those divisions like these guys today. They just make these pit stops just so they can say, I got a title. Duran obviously wanted world titles, but he wanted real world titles. He wanted, when people said, Roberto Duran is a champion, he wanted to be the champion, the real champion, the lineal champion, the undisputed champion. He wanted to be the man. These guys, like today, they're picking up belts, but they're not fighting the best. They're not fighting champions. They're beating belt holders. Roberto Duran never beat belt holders. All his titles were legitimate, in my opinion. They were against champions, not against belt holders. With all due respect, Floyd Mayweather beating Arturo Gatti at 140 was Arturo Gatti the best guy at 140? Oscar De La Hoya at 154? Out of his prime, Oscar De La Hoya at 154? Nearing the tail end of his career? Picking up a title at that? Roberto Duran beat all his titles. He fought against guys who were in their prime. And you could argue they were the men in their division. They were the number one guy in their division. It's really hard to dispute those points that I just made. It's really hard to argue against that, in my opinion. And when he fought at a weight class, he stayed there. He unified titles. Gave guys rematches. Stayed in weight classes a couple years. Didn't just fight one fight at a weight class and leave just to say, I got a title. At the time they were, yes, Sean Newton. Yes, they were at the time. Barkley beat Tommy Hearns. Knocked him out in the 3rd round. That's just my opinion. You could be the contrarian all you want, but who was better? Who was better than Barkley at that time? I mean, if you just beat Tommy Hearns, who was the man, if you beat the man, then you beat the man. Name a better junior middleweight at the time than Davey Moore, because again, there was only 2 weight classes, and the rating system was much better back then. Name a better junior middleweight at the time than Davey Moore at that time. The weight class was fairly new. There wasn't a lot of big names there, so Davey Moore was the man. Davey Moore was the man at that time, yes. If you want to disagree with me, you have to name fighters that name a junior middleweight at that time that was better than Davey Moore. Got to name it. That's what you got to do. That's what you got to do. That's what you got to do. Leonard. How many fights at junior middleweight did Leonard fight? He moved up, fought one fight at junior middleweight, and then he went right back down to welterweight. He never campaigned at junior middleweight. He did what Floyd did. Leonard did what Floyd did. He did what Floyd did. So, at certain points in his career. Sugar Ray Leonard's my favorite fighter of all time. Sugar Ray Leonard fought one fight at 154, and that's it. Davey Moore was a legitimate 154 pounder. How could you say that Leonard was a 154 pounder when he only fought one fight at 154, and then he moved right back down to welterweight? And then if you want to count the Terry Norris fight, then you can do that all you want, but that's kind of ridiculous because that was way after his prime when that was another one and done. But at that time, Leonard moved up and he moved right back down. He fought one fight. So you can't really say that Leonard was ever when you look at the greatest junior middleweights of all time, Sugar Ray Leonard's not going to be mentioned in that class because he really only fought twice there. I don't remember Vito Antuofermo fighting at junior middleweight. I don't remember it. So I could be wrong, but I don't remember him ever fighting at junior middleweight. And I don't remember him ever being a junior middleweight champion either, Vito Antuofermo. So again, this is my opinion. This is just my opinion. I'm sure you can argue either way. McCallum and Benitez both better. Never said they weren't. But again, Mike McCallum wasn't junior middleweight champion when Roberto Duran was junior middleweight champion. That's the difference. So that's it. Let's go back and look for the sake of argument. And let's look at when that fight was, and then we'll look at the ring ratings. Then we'll look at the ring ratings. I mean, Sean, you're gonna come on and just disagree. Like you're never gonna come on and agree with me. Like if I said the opposite, you would just say the opposite. You're always gonna be a contrarian. So we already know what you're doing. If you want to have like a legitimate debate, you can have a legitimate debate. But if you want to just be a contrarian, that's fine. I mean, no problem about that if you just want to be a contrarian. So they fought in 1983. So let's look at the ring ratings in 1983. Ring ratings 1983. Okay. All right, so we'll stand corrected at that. Tommy Hearns was the junior middleweight champion at that time. He was ranked. He was thought of as the champion at junior middleweight. And Wilfred Benitez was number one ranked, and Roberto Duran was number two. But in fairness to Roberto Duran, he fought Tommy Hearns at junior middleweight and got knocked out. Yeah, Duran did fight the best in every division. I was 100% correct. I'm wrong. Duran fought Tommy Hearns and Wilfredo Benitez. Duran lost to Tommy Hearns at junior middleweight. He got knocked out in 2 rounds. So he did fight the best in every division. Yes, he did. I am correct. You're going to sit there and tell me that Duran didn't fight Tommy Hearns now? That's not true? That didn't happen? You could correct me by one statement I made that I think is incorrect is every division that he fought in, he fought the best guy to become champion. You could argue, you could say that at junior middleweight that wasn't the case. You could say that. That's that. I'll concede that point. Sure, I'll concede that point. Hearns KO'd him and Benitez beat him by unanimous decision, but at least he fought those guys. At least he fought those guys. So he beat the best lightweight. He beat the best welterweight. At the time, you could argue he beat the best middleweight when he won. The only fight, but at least at junior middleweight, he did fight Tommy Hearns. He did try to fight the best at that division. At least he, in every weight class that he fought in, you could argue that he fought the best fighter in that division. There was never a question like when Floyd fought at 140. Now, obviously, he beat Ricky Hatton at 147, so that could kind of trump that. But what I'm saying is, Floyd fought Arturo Gatti at 140. Manny Pacquiao fought Antonio Margarito at 154. So I will concede, you guys are right. I'm not afraid to say I was wrong on that point. At 154, he did not win a title against the best guy. That's correct. But at least he did fight the best guys at 154 to try to win a title. Whereas guys today will just fight anyone just so they can get a title. We can agree on that, I think. But you guys are correct. Yeah, at 154, no, he did not. He did not. He did not fight the best guy to become a world champion. So I will concede that point. Not afraid to admit I'm wrong. Not afraid to admit I'm wrong. In that case, yeah. But for the most part, you could still say his titles were legitimate. Julian Jackson, what, Logan? What are you talking about? What are you talking about, Julian Jackson? What's his name being mentioned as? But anyway, that's just, I think Duran's career to me is more impressive than Floyd Mayweather's. When you think about it. I don't think Duran's career is difficult to assess. Beeb, why did Floyd not have a few middleweight fights? I think he should have fought. Floyd should have been the one to fight Sergio Martinez, in my opinion, instead of Miguel Cotto. And I remember on the Boxing Voice, I was interviewing Floyd Sr. and I said, why did they not fight Sergio Martinez at that time? That's the thing. But can anyone in this chat really tell me that Floyd Mayweather's career was more impressive than Roberto Duran's career? Honestly, does he have the memorable fights that Duran had? Has anyone ever said Floyd? Has anyone ever said Floyd was the best of all time in any division? I don't even think it's a comparison. But to this day, Floyd was on being interviewed by Shannon Sharpe, he still comes out and tries to throw shade at these guys instead of just paying homage. I don't even think you can compare the two careers. Am I wrong to say that maybe Roberto Duran had the best, most impressive career of all time? A guy that fought for 33 years as a pro. A guy that fought for 33 years as a pro has the second longest career in the history of the sport. Has the second longest career in the history of the sport. You could argue that Oscar De La Hoya was the greatest at 130 because he fought more fights at 130, and Oscar De La Hoya actually unified at 130. I don't believe Floyd ever did. You can argue that Oscar De La Hoya is the greatest 130-pounder of all time. You could even argue that Oscar De La Hoya, well, I wouldn't say the best at 154, but you could say I think you could argue that Oscar De La Hoya was the best 130-pounder of all time. He did way more at 130 than Floyd did. I agree, Sean. You look at any division Floyd fought in, I don't even think you could put him in the top 5. Maybe at 130 you could put him in the top 5 of all time. There's a lot of guys at lightweight I think that would be better than Floyd. Welterweight, junior middleweight. Outside of 130, I don't think you could put Floyd in the top 5 of any of the divisions he fought in of all time, in my opinion. That's just my opinion. And at least Oscar unified titles. Oscar unified titles. He was undisputed. He was lineal. You know? Floyd left a lot of question marks in his career where these other guys did not. That's the thing. Unfortunately, we have to be honest. Floyd spent. Now, I would argue De La Hoya is the best at 130. I would argue Floyd's the best at 130. I don't know if Floyd was Leonard at 130. We're gonna have to take a look. We'll have to go back and take a look at that. We got 3 wins at 130 exactly. That's it. Floyd Mayweather had a 21-year career. He had a 21-year career. Name another fighter that had a longer career than Roberto Duran. This guy fought in 5 decades, bro. And in those 5 decades, the longest inactivity period was 1.5 years. Other guys take 3 years off, 4 years off, 5 years off. George Foreman took 10 years off, for Christ's sakes. Obviously, Muhammad Ali took 3 years off, but there was times when he took 2 years off too. Like Duran was just, oh my God, he was just just a warrior, man. Let's be honest. As great as Floyd Mayweather was, he did everything he could to protect that 0. These other guys never cared about putting themselves in a situation where they could lose. I'm sure all these guys had questions. Can I beat this guy? Am I going to win this fight? Floyd, in my opinion, never put himself in a situation where there was any doubt that he was going to lose. And even in the Pacquiao fight, he fought so cautiously in that fight. He fought overly cautiously in that fight, to the point where I thought he looked apprehensive. I'm not going to say he's scared because he got in the ring. I've never called a fighter scared. I've never insulted a fighter that way. But he looked like he was in that fight. He was very concerned at what he had in front of him. I've never seen Floyd fight that cautiously ever in my life, ever. In the biggest fight of his life, he fought excessively. Even his own father in the corner said, "You're not scared, are you?" He said that. Those words came out of the trainer's mouth, his father. And I'm not going to sit there and say he was, but he had a look of apprehension on his face. He had a demeanor in which he looked like he was concerned with what he had in front of him. That's my opinion. Yeah, I give him credit for the Canelo victory. That was a good win. That, to me, that was probably arguably his greatest win of all time because he was so much older than Canelo, so much smaller than Canelo. I give him credit for that. But again, people really weren't sold on Canelo at that time. Canelo wasn't really established at that time. Sit there and say whatever you want, you know. Sit there and say whatever you want. But to me, I think Duran. Yeah, Bernard Hopkins had a 28-year career, 27-year career, but not a 33-year career. Be honest. So that's just, I mean, that's how I feel. But you guys corrected me. I made a statement that he fought the best, the top. Well, he did fight the toughest champions in every single division, but he didn't win titles against the best. Like that Davey Moore title at the time, Tommy Hearns, I believe was the WBC junior middleweight champion, and Davey Moore was the WBA. So yeah, he didn't win the junior middleweight title against the best junior middleweight. So I'll concede that point. I think I was wrong on that one. But that's why you guys are here, man. You guys got to call me out if I'm wrong about something. That's fine. That's fine. But I think his other titles are legit. And if he wanted, and if he wanted to be a belt grabber too, he could have picked up belts at 130 and 140. But like I said, those divisions were fairly new when he was a pro. There weren't really a lot of big names at 130 at the time. There weren't a lot of big names at 140 at the time. He could have easily won titles in those two divisions, and he could have been in my opinion, a 6-weight world champion. I still don't think Manny Pacquiao was a true 8-weight world champion because, in my opinion, you shouldn't be counting a ring title and an IBO title as legitimate titles, in my opinion. So, what do you mean Oscar never unified at 130? I think he only had the one. I think he only had the WBO title at 130, but he unified at 135, and he unified at 154. I don't know. Did I say he unified at 130? I don't remember saying that. I remember saying he unified titles. He unified 135 and he unified at 154. If I said that he unified at 130, I stand corrected. It's fine. You guys can listen. There's no ego here, man. You can check me. Guys want to check me, you can check me, man. You know that. You know that. You know that. But Oscar De La Hoya, he stayed at 135 for a good period of time. 154 for a good period of time. Middleweight was kind of like a pit stop, but even Oscar De La Hoya, he fought the best guy at middleweight in Bernard Hopkins. I think the only division you could really say that Floyd went really I think the only division you could really say Floyd really did good at 130 at was 130. All right, let's compare Floyd at 130 to Oscar at 140. We'll look at all the opponents. We'll look at all Oscar De La Hoya's opponents at 130. Oscar actually turned pro at lightweight, and then he went down to 130. Yeah, yeah. We'll say Floyd was better at 130 than Oscar. Oscar only had two fights, really two fights at 130. He didn't spend much time there. But I think at 135, let's look at Floyd at 130. We'll take a look. We'll have to concede that point too. I think Floyd was better at 130. That was really the only division that Floyd I think really left a mark was at 130. But let's look at Floyd's career. So turned pro at 131, 131 the second fight. So the first two fights he fought at lightweight. Jerry Cooper 130. How many fights did Floyd really have at 130? Let's look. You could argue that their careers are very similar at 130. If you think about it, he didn't spend much time at 130. The Hernandez win was a good win. The Manfredi win was good. Oscar De La Hoya beat those same guys when they moved up to lightweight. Justin Juco. Diego Corrales was a good win. Jesus Chavez was a good win. Yeah. We'll give him that, B Marsh. We'll give him that. Well, you can't say he spent 3 years at 130 because even when he was fighting at 130, he fought his last fight at 130 was in 2001. So yeah, I guess. But even when he turned pro, a lot of those fights were at 133, 132. $134. Yeah, we'll give you that. 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 You did your homework. We'll give you that. Floyd Mayweather is better than Oscar De La Hoya at 130. All right, you know what? We can make an argument that Floyd was probably the best junior lightweight of all time. I think that's a solid argument. See, we're making progress here. My mind can be changed. My mind can be changed. My mind can be changed. And people could say, well, that's a junior division, but it's been around since 1959, so we gotta give it some type of credence. It's been around for a little while. B Marsh, we'll concede that point. We'll be fair. Floyd Mayweather could arguably be the best junior lightweight of all time. I think he would have beat Azuma Nelson. And that's when he beat Diego Corrales at 132. That was a huge win. He was actually a 3-1. We'll concede that point. But outside of 130, we have to really look at his career. Like Duran had a decent career at 135, had a really good career at 147, had a decent career at 160. You know? Had a decent career at 160. Outside of 130, you could say that Floyd had some letdowns in the other weight classes. Let's take a look at Roberto Duran's career at 154. And let's just try to compare and contrast. Because I don't think Duran spent that much time at 154, if I can remember correctly. Yeah, he didn't have that many fights at 154. after he beat Davey Moore. So now he beat Davey Moore. Now Tommy Hearns, he fought Tommy Hearns after Davey Moore. Lost to Benitez and he lost to Benitez and Hearns and he lost to Kirkland too at Davey Moore. So at 154, excuse me. So he only had like one, two. Well, he weighed 155 in the Kirkland Lang fight, so he's essentially he was a middleweight. That was a huge upset. So technically, he didn't really have a huge career at junior middleweight. He fought like one, two, three. Yeah. But he fought two great junior middleweights in Benitez and Tommy Hearns, though. You got to give him credit for that. Got to give him that. So he did beat Davey Moore first, and then he was attempting to unify against Tommy Hearns. So you got to give him credit for that. He tried to fight the best guy. Floyd would never do that. Floyd didn't do that. Floyd didn't do that. Robbie Sims was at middleweight, Logan. That was a middleweight fight. It wasn't a junior middleweight fight. That was a junior middleweight fight. Look, this is so crazy. When he fought Ray Leonard the third time, they fought for Ray Leonard's super middleweight title, and he weighed 158 pounds, and Ray Leonard weighed 160. Crazy. Crazy. Floyd was never demanded to fight who was thought to be the best. Nah, I disagree with that. I disagree with that. But that's your opinion, but I disagree with that. I don't think you can compare the two careers, man. I just don't think you can compare the two careers. B. Marsh, I can concede that. I think you could argue Floyd was the best 130 pounder of all time. I can. I think you prove your point. I think you're correct. I can agree with that. Yeah, I think I really would have loved to see Floyd fight Cotto at 147 when Cotto was like on top of his game. Um, I would have loved to have seen him fight Antonio Margarito 147. I would have loved to see him fight Paul Williams at 147. He left a lot on the table at 147. When he retired, there were a lot of good fights he left on the table. In my opinion, you know that's why 147 will always his first run at 147. Challenge yourself and getting an ass beaten shouldn't get. Yeah, it should. Yeah, it should. Yeah, it should. You're basically you're basically saying that you should only take fights that you should win, that you're supposed to win. That's basically what you're saying. You're the type of person that's basically saying, oh, well, Floyd passed on Margarita to get his biggest payday ever versus Oscar. Could have had both. Could have had both. Could have had both. Guys are making excuses for the guy, bro. There's legitimate question marks. Definitely legitimate question marks. He didn't fight Cotto at 147. He didn't fight Paul Williams. Didn't fight Antonio Margarito. That's 3 fighters in their primes that he avoided. He retired. That's the thing. That's the problem. He retired when the division was hot. And it almost looked like he retired because the division was hot. So let me step away from the heat. Oh yeah, I mean, again. Why? What do you want to talk about, Kevin? You want me to give you a link? I'll give you a link, Kevin, so you can intimidate me because I'm so scared of you. I'll give you a link. Here you go. We'll give you a link, Kevin, because you're so intimidating. Let's see if you click on it. We'll let you click on it. No, I mean this is a great debate. I think you guys are right. I think B Marsh will concede the point. Floyd, we can make a statement that Floyd was probably the best 130-pounder of all time. We can give you that. And Duran did fight the best at 154, but he lost. He lost to the 2 best guys. He lost to Benitez and he lost to Hearns. So that's fine. Yeah, Floyd didn't have the problem with Floyd is when he's trying to compare eras. He's trying to use statistics like I fought 25 world champions. No, technically you fought some world champions, but you also fought a lot of belt holders. Technically, Duran fought true world champions. Floyd fought a lot of belt holders. Yeah, but Cotto and Floyd should have fought at 147, in my opinion. Who's Billy? Is this Kevin?
This is Billy. Yeah, this is Kevin. What's up?
All right. So what do you want to say to me? What's the deal? You trying to say Floyd's resume is better? You trying to say Floyd had a better career than Roberto Duran?
I got to take regarding Deontay Wilder firing his trainer.
Why you want to talk? That's not the topic, bro. You can't come.
Floyd,
all right.
Floyd Mayweather.
Go ahead. You can talk about that. We'll let you talk about that for a little bit. I'm sure people will care about that. Go ahead. Talk to me about that.
I called into Mike Montero's show and I said, why do people are trying to bring a moral judgment? Like, oh, he has a family, he has a kids, he saved them, you should be thanking him. But really, that's not our place to say. It's his career, his life. They know what they sign up for. Let him go out on his shield. If he wants to get killed in the ring, that's his right to do so.
So if you were a trainer and you were in Mark Breland's position, would you have let him stay in there and let himself get beat up like that?
It depends. If I had a conversation and said, let me go out on my shield, don't stop the fight, then yep, I would want to do that.
So you would have no concern for the guy's well-being or health if he suffered irreparable damage in that fight because you didn't stop it. You wouldn't lose sleep over that at all.
I probably would, but then I wouldn't take the job. I wouldn't take the job if that's what he asked. If he said, don't stop the fight, let me go out on my shield, then I'd say, all right, this job isn't for me. I can't be your trainer.
So was Breland wrong in what he did, or was he right?
Well, it depends. If the conversation said Wilder told him don't stop the fight, you better don't stop the fight, and he
So
stopped it, then he was wrong.
if you had a conversation with somebody and they asked you to do something that you didn't believe in and you didn't agree with it, then you would be. So in other words, you're trying to say that Breland shouldn't have been in that corner because he had philosophical differences with Deontay Wilder. Is that your stance?
My stance is why Breland is an employee of Wilder. Wilder went out of his way to employ Breland. Wilder is the boss. What he says goes. If he wants to go out there and be knocked out cold, then that's his choice. We can't argue. That's his choice, his body, his choice. And for us to say no, that's wrong, this and that, then we have.
Why do people come on here with jacked
What
up
did they
internet?
sign up for? These are warriors. You know,
So
if they wouldn't get into boxing,
it's not the trainer's job to save the fighter from himself. That's not part of the trainer's job, in your opinion.
it is part of the job, but it's also about business, some more about fatherly figure. It all depends. Not.
So if you were a trainer and you saw a fighter getting beat to the point where he was going to be severely damaged, then you would just let it go. You would think that's the right thing to do. It's the trainer's job to protect the fighter, bro. That's part of the job of being a trainer.
Beeb, it all depends on the fighter. It goes
No, it
by
doesn't.
case by case.
No, it doesn't depend on the fighter. So if the fighter says, "Let me go out there if I'm blind, if I'm blind in one eye and I can't see," and the fighter says, "Let me go out there and fight with one eye," you're going to let him go out there and fight with one eye even though he can't see? If a fighter breaks his leg or rolls his ankle and breaks his ankle and can't stand on his 2 feet and says, "Let me go out there and fight," you're going to let him go out there and fight? Got to use common sense, bro. The guy was getting the bag beat out of him.
I'm going to listen to my fighter. If
No,
the fighter wants to fight,
you don't listen to the fighter. That's not the job of the trainer. The job of the fighter is to listen to the trainer. The trainer is the guy that runs the show. You listen to the trainer. The fighter's supposed to listen to the trainer. The trainer runs the camp, not the fighter. If you're a fighter and you're running your own camp, then you don't need a trainer. Why even have a trainer if you're going to run your own camp?
but Beeb, Deontay Wilder is not like that. He know what he
Doesn't
has.
matter. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Why am I gonna hire a trainer if I'm gonna train myself? I'm wasting my money.
Wilder needs yes men around him. That's who he employs. Yes men.
Well, we're gonna disagree on this topic. We're gonna go around in circles. I mean, the trainer's job is to run the camp. You think it's the fighter's job to run the camp? That's fine. Should have. Breland did the right thing, simple and plain. And if that situation happens again and the fight's not stopped and he suffers irreparable damage, then it is what it is. I'm going to let you go, man, because I want to go back to the Floyd Mayweather topic. This ain't the topic anymore. All right.
All right. Last point regarding this, real quick. But who knows if that's the even reason why he fired him? Maybe he wanted to try. Maybe he wanted to give a new look. Maybe he wasn't prepared, so he's like, let me get a new trainer in there because my old trainer didn't have me prepared. Maybe that's the reason he fired him. We never know. But how do you like my snail?
This ain't National Geographic, brother. Please. All right, I'm gonna let you go, man. This is going down a rabbit hole that I don't want to go down. All right, peace. All right. I don't know what the fuck all that was about, but yeah. So back to the topic here. So yeah, I think we pretty much covered everything here. Guys made some good points. B. Marsh, I think you came prepared. I agree with you on the 130-pound weight class. You made some good points there. If you think about it, I still think Duran's career is much more accomplished, much more impressive, but it is what it is. All right, guys. Thank you for joining me in the chat. Talk to y'all soon. Have a great day, man. Peace out.